Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace, here today with a writer whose work I really enjoy. We've covered his books on the show before. He's here to talk about three of them today. It's my pleasure to welcome Rich Douek to the show. Rich, thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jace.
Yeah, so let's kick it off by talking about Heartpiercer, because that just came out this week.
Yep.
We're going to be a little spoilery, everybody, for the first issue, but not totally, because we want you to check it out. And Rich is going to tease the second issue for us as well. So let's start off by letting our audience know what's Heartpiercer about. What's your elevator pitch for the series?
Yeah, sure. So Heartpiercer is a dark fantasy story, and it's about a huntress who was committed to killing all these magical beasts in defense of humanity, or so she thought. But it turns out that all the beasts she was killing were the only things holding back even darker creatures, and those are unleashed upon the world. So she has to reckon with the fact that she basically caused the apocalypse in this fantasy world, and it's basically her road to revenge against the people who tricked her into doing it.
Yeah, it's very much kind of fantasy. Your artist Gavin Smith captures the monsters and the hordes and the evil that's unleashed really, really well. But there's also a romance to it. The
Hmm.
kind of the woman here who's at the heart of the story, like you mentioned, she's tricked Adela by this what appears to be to her to be this kind of this very handsome Lord Kern, and then turns out to be something completely different. So, in your
Hmm.
mind, does the idea of a fantasy world and kind of this spurned romance, does that sort of go hand in hand?
Yeah, I think it does. Like it's funny, like we use the word fantasy, and it's like, and like we like in one sense, it's like talking about like these like worlds with dragons and wizards and things, but the other is like almost like an ideal world. And I think like, having this kind of like a fairy tale romance is another aspect of fantasy that we kind of subvert in Heartpiercer. Uh, so yeah, I think that was definitely like a part of it, just sort of like presenting that like kind of fairy tale fantasy aspect of it on the surface, but it turns out to be something much darker.
Yeah, and you chose to go with kind of a protagonist that's very much badass, but a female protagonist.
Hmm.
Um, what went into the thinking of that? I mean, I think it works really, really well as we see in the first issue. She's kind of spurned, but even before, she's very formidable. And now that she's pissed off, it seems like she's even more formidable.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the sort of thing where it was like, oh, well, like I have to have a female protagonist to like, for I don't know, diversity purposes or something like that. Like it just made more sense to me. Um, like she almost just sort of like came into my mind, like not like fully formed, but just the idea of that she would be this like really badass huntress. And then just sort of like built it out from there. I think it is really important to have like, a wide variety of protagonists and a wide variety of, you know, uh, points of view and things like that in storytelling. It's just that, I guess like for me, when I write, like it has to be kind of like right for the story as well. Like I don't want to like kind of shoehorn it in there. I want to really have it, feel natural and make sense.
Yeah, and it very much does feel natural. She's somebody you can root for, but in the beginning, it's a little kind of almost unclear. Is she doing this?
Hmm.
I mean, most of the time you think of unicorn, you think of something beautiful and something to be
Yeah.
preserved, and she's kind of you mentioned her having to go out and kill these different monsters, and then it turns out she's been tricked, as we said. So when you were conceiving the story, was this a situation where you kind of had the idea of this badass huntress and then the story formed around her? Did you have the idea for kind of the story you wanted to tell and the characters came secondary? Like, give us an idea and maybe some of the
Sure.
inspirations behind it.
Yeah, it came about where I guess like what I really wanted to explore was just the idea of somebody doing something that they were 100% convinced was the right thing to do. You know, like going out there and basically accepting what they were told and believing it and fighting for this cause, and then suddenly realizing that the cause that they were fighting for, like the people they shouldn't have trusted, the people that they trusted, they should have looked a little bit deeper into what like the motives behind like what their mission was and things like that. And I think that's like something we kind of see a lot in I guess like more modern stories, like maybe like that's like a common thing in like spy stories or like real world kind of espionage or war stories and things like that. And I just thought it would be interesting to take it into a fantasy realm. And I also, so concurrent like with that, I also really wanted to um, explore some fantasy that incorporated a lot of kind of classic horror and like monster elements to it. That's why I like our main protagonists in this first arc are werewolves. If you look at, you know, some of the kind of background characters in some of the panels, you'll see like vampires and dragons and well, dragons aren't exactly classic horror, but I just I wanted to kind of take this world of like classic horror and explore that kind of fantasy world, almost like a really good example of that is there's this D&D setting called Ravenloft, which
Right.
is like kind of similar. Yeah. So it's kind of like a Ravenloft type world.
Yeah, as you were describing it, that's what I was thinking of. I was thinking of Ravenloft, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, well, I think you've done a really good job, of what you're talking about, kind of exploring the motivations. And we're all human. We all make mistakes, and we all have regret and things that we wish we could undo. And so often, if you say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, you can't unring that bell, right? Like
Yeah,
once it's
exactly.
done. So even though it feels like this might be a redemption art for Heartpiercer, as she's known in the story, um, it's like, can she really make up for everything that's gone wrong when she kind of wakes up? So that's going to be an interesting kind of theme going forward, like her motivation and yeah, she's such a hard edge to her right now. Um, will she soften? Will she become more relatable? I'm curious to that as well. So what can you tease without getting too spoilery about what's to come in the series?
Yeah, so in the second issue, we're kind of introduced a little bit more to the forces of darkness that are um, kind of surrounding this town that she's found, or like, I mean, in here she's found the two survivors, these two men, and they basically agree to bring her back to the town. And we learn that this town is basically under siege by like a tribe of werewolves. Um, but they do have kind of like, there's like a darkness going on inside the town as well, where they basically kind of made this deal where they like give up a certain number of children to the werewolves every year in order for the werewolves not to like wipe them out.
Mm,
And that story has like some ties to Atala's own past, but it also, the leader of the werewolves is this like basically like humongous werewolf called the Howler that she has a connection to as well. And we explore that in like the in the next few issues, kind of like what their connection is and how they basically go back to before, like before all this happened.
Yeah, again, all out action, everybody. Fantastic art from Gavin Smith. So the second issue is out on June 12th. So now's the time to let your comic shop know uh, that you want issue two. And you know, you can say, hey, you know, put me down for the whole series or what have you. And you should be able to get a copy of issue one. Again, it's from Dark Horse. It came out just this past Wednesday. Highly recommended. It's really interesting. It hits the ground running with action like right from the start. Very fast paced. So highly recommend it. A couple other series from Rich that I've really enjoyed. A little bit older, but I definitely want a chance to talk to him. I've talked to Rich before online about having him come on. Glad we're finally making it happen. Next one I want to talk about is Drive Like Hell. So four issue. Um, it's completely done. I think the trade comes out in December,
Yep.
but you can certainly find all the issues. Ask your retailer to order them for you. This is like those old like 70s like road movies with a guy on the run from the cops, kind of like
Yeah.
Smokey and the Bandit, like turned up to 11 or what's the one? Something something dirty Mary fast.
Oh, Dirty Mary, Crazy
Yeah,
Larry.
yeah,
Yeah. Cannonball Run is another one.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're of a similar age, so that's got to be like the inspiration for this. But then again, with kind of your aesthetic of dialing it all the way up with the action and bringing in some horror elements, right? So give us the elevator pitch for Drive Like Hell. Let everybody know what it's about.
Yeah, just so Drive Like Hell is about a car thief who steals a car to use on a bank robbery, but it turns out that the car belongs to the devil, and devil sends a whole pack of demons to get it back, and they mess up the robbery. And Bobby Ray, who's the driver, winds up on the run uh, from basically a cop, like police that are possessed by demons and satanic biker gangs, truckers, uh, a televangelist, like basically just like everybody, like it just keeps getting crazier and crazier. All the people that are after this car and what's in the trunk. And it all just leads to this really big, kind of road epic demolition derby. Like, we try to like smash up as many cars as possible in every single issue. It's a lot of fun, and it really is like it's exactly like those movies that you mentioned, like are like the main inspiration for it. It's almost like a kind of like a love letter to those types of movies with the added sauce of devils and demons and angels fighting over like with like possessed cars and things like that. So it's a lot of fun to write. Like was actually like one of the most fun times I've had like writing a series.
Yeah, I could tell you're having a ton of fun. And the other thing that it kind of reminded me of, and everybody, the art is fantastic as well. Alex Cormack, who's a frequent collaborator of Rich, does a fantastic job. There was a really bad kind of a chase movie, car movie. I think it was even called Chase. I think it was like late 90s, early 2000s, like Charlie Sheen
Yeah,
and
Charlie Sheen. Yeah, and I forget who the girl was,
yeah,
but
Christy Swanson, I think.
yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and this kind of reminded me of that in that the one thing is corny as Chase is, the entertaining part of it is that it things do keep dialing up, right? Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have like the Red Hot Chili Pepper guy, Flea and Anthony Kiedis like in a big 4x4 trying to run him off the road, and then like yeah,
Hmm.
the stakes just keep and that's what happens to Bobby Ray and Dahlia here. Like the stakes keep ratcheting up. Um, so I'm curious about the pacing. Like, did you know, okay, this is going to be, when you were kind of conceiving it, planning it out, outlining it, what have you, this is going to be four issues. This is the way it's going to be paced, and I know how I'm going to ratchet up those beats. Was that challenging, or did it come kind of easy as the story was unfolding?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that it wasn't challenging, but it was something that I had planned for because like basically another like the chase is a great example. Another like more modern example is like kind of is Mad Max Fury Road.
Right.
Not that this is like post-apocalypse, but that whole movie is basically just like sort of like one big chase scene, and then they stop for a minute, and then it's like one whole big chase scene back. So it was just kind of like looking at it like that, like how do we tell this story where like, you kind of put the gas down and you don't let up in those 4 issues. And the funny thing was, it was originally planned to be like 5 issues. Dark Horse wanted to do four, so we kind of like jiggered the pages around so we didn't really lose that much story. But the funny thing about it was that like even like 5 issues, I think it probably would have kept the same pace. It would have just been like just adding even more kind of like craziness to it.
I love it, but I'm disappointed we didn't get a fifth issue because the other thing I wanted to ask you was, uh, this is such a great character, Bobby Ray. He's unapologetically who he is, which is a badass driver. Even to the point that he's outmaneuvering demons and demonic cops and devils and angels and what have you. I would love another series with Bobby Ray. Maybe with Dahlia, maybe not. You could even do like a prequel.
Yeah.
I just want to see more of Bobby Ray because, he kind of has this code, if you will, and he mentions in the story like be who you are, and what I am is a badass driver. And maybe I haven't made the smartest
Mhm.
decisions in my life, but nobody can take away from the fact that I can drive a car better than anybody. Like there's just something like that's relatable there. You can't help but root for the guy. So, uh,
Yeah.
possibilities of more of this.
Yeah, I mean, there's always possibilities, I mean, like I know Alex had a great time drawing it too, so we might get together, think about it, maybe like Bobby Ray rides again or something like that. Yeah, I mean, like I think that was kind of like the point of the story was that it was like, you've got like everyone in the world and heaven and hell telling you to like wanting you to do one thing, and it's like, no, I'm going to do my thing. I'm making my decisions. I don't really care, what anyone says. So, that was like, I think like a really cool aspect of his character.
Yeah, and he just loved that car.
Yep.
It was like love at first sight when he laid eyes on it. It was fantastic. So again, everybody, drive like hell. The four shoes are out. They're available. If you want to wait for the trade, now's the time. Let your retailer know. You can probably go on Amazon and pre-order it as well. Should be out just in time for Christmas. And then the last book that we have to talk about, and I have to admit, this is the book that kind of, I'd heard your name, obviously, being a comic fan for such a long time, but this is the book that really put you on my radar. It's like, man, I got to pay attention to what this guy does because it's really fantastic. And it's from
Oh, thank
the late great Aftershock. It's called The Ocean Will Take Us. It was a 5 issue series. I'm pretty sure we spotlighted the issues as they came out on our new comic book day episodes. Gorgeous art from Carlos Oliveras. And it's this kind of, again, a horror story, but with a little bit of kind of environmental awareness, but also this kind of Goonies aspect here. You put together this crew of young high school kids who are trying to save their town. So, how do you pitch the series? How do you describe it?
I basically call it, uh, even though it's not H.P. Lovecraft, I say it's like the Breakfast Club versus Cthulhu. Like, it's kind of like these like, misfit teens in a California town who are all like kind of outcasts for one reason or another, find each other, and it starts with discovering that there's this conspiracy going on with the swim team in their school, but that kind of branches out into a greater conspiracy that's taken root in the town that involves a like high tech company that is basically like an ocean energy type company, and an ancient entity that lives in the cove that the town is built around. So it was just like yeah, it's basically like, and the more they investigate, the deeper they get entangled with like fighting this cult and causing mayhem like all over the town.
Yeah,
The
and
Goonies, another good reference, yeah.
and another one that really was left open ended, where we hopefully we'll get more of it at some day. I know
Yeah.
about it after Aftershock. I'm sure it's a rights thing and that. But I'm glad you mentioned Breakfast Club because that's one of the things. Like I always kind of associated, Goonies, as I said. But you're right. Like Breakfast Club is better, right? Because those kids were thrown together by circumstance, much like the kids in
Mhm.
the story, and they don't all get along. And that's kind of what's going on here, right? Like a lot of the kind of the Goonies-esque type stories, it's like a group of best friends, right? They're already friends.
Yeah.
predisposed to be together. These kids aren't. They don't even necessarily get along, or some of them don't even necessarily like each other. They're thrown together by circumstance. I love the interaction, but it had to be a challenge to kind of give everybody, their time to shine and kind of
Oh yeah.
get a little bit of characterization and because it is such a big cast.
Yeah, you have to kind of you have to give each character kind of, you know, in every issue, each one kind of needs something to do that doesn't feel like you're sidelining them or giving them like busy work or something like that. And they also need to interact with each other, need to interact with the wider world. Um, and yeah, like it's hard to kind of like give each character their moment, their moment to shine and their moment to like really show what they can do and show why they're, unique and why they're awesome. I think I did a pretty good job, but it definitely was like a lot of back and forth. But I think like one of the most fun parts about writing it was just sort of getting into the heads of like the different kids and the banter that goes on between them. Just kind of hearing their voices in my head and also almost these like conversations taking on a life of their own. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, because that's the other thing that I think is always a challenge when you have a big cast, right? And this
Yeah.
hasn't always been the case. Like, go back and read like so. As much as I love them, like go back and read like some old like Avengers stuff from like the mid '80s or whatever. Everybody like Cap and Thor and Iron Man, they're all speaking in kind of the same vocabulary, same voice.
Yeah.
You didn't fall into that trap. They each sound unique. They each sound different. You can almost, if you just had the words and no little tail on the word balloon, you could almost know who it was that was saying it just by the way they're saying it. So
Oh,
there's
that's
been
great.
a lot of
Yeah.
script passes to get that right.
Yeah, it took a lot of like script passes, a lot of refinement and like and also like, I mean, I was worried that I was like too old to write high schoolers, like just come off like you know, like what was that you ever see that Steve Buscemi gif where it's like, "Hello, fellow kids,"
Oh
like that.
yeah. Yep.
But but I think I did a pretty good job of making them not sound like old men in young kids' bodies. But yeah, there's a lot of like back and forth, a lot of dialogue, um, revisions, both like working with my editors, but also like on my own, just doing a lot of passes and tweaking and making sure things like sounded right.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it's got
giving
a
them each distinct voices was a big part of it.
the other thing that's very distinct is kind of the look, right? So
Yeah.
Carlos's art is fantastic, clearly a manga influence. So I'm curious about like the character designs because they're fantastic. It's kind of this youthful, exuberant art, which I also love, right? Because especially if you say Cthulhu kind of horror story, you can be dark, with the colors and the art can be a little muddy. This is not that. It's very bright, but it still works. So I'm curious about the character design. Do you have ideas in your head of what they were going to look like? Did you pass those on to Carlos? Was it a back and forth, or did you just let him go crazy? Talk to us a little bit about building out the way the characters look.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of back and forth. I basically gave him like maybe a paragraph, character sketch of each one. And like, to be honest, like I didn't really dictate physical stuff mostly. Like in those, it was more just about like kind of like what they're into, what they're about, like their personality and things like that. Because, at the end of the day, like it didn't really matter to me if like one of them had blonde hair or red hair or whatever it was, or, like to wear, yellow shirts instead of like, a black shirt or whatever. It was more just important that their personality kind of shine through. And I think that's what Carlos really did that was like amazing. Like each character, uh, just like who they are, just really shines through their design. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can like you can look at them and just really kind of get a feel for like what they're all about and and what they're like like kind of like what's going on like behind their head. Even um like the antagonists and stuff like that. Like they have like very kind of like sharp angular features and it is like, a a technique I think he took like from manga because manga is very, a lot of like the character designs can be like exaggerated and you can have like again it's almost like parts of their character's personality really come through and like the way their faces are, the way their expressions are and things like that. So I think he did an amazing job with that.
Yeah, I think a perfect example, Trent, who's kind of the boyfriend
Yeah.
of one of the kids who has a very sharp nose and he just has that sinister look, as opposed to who Danica, who's kind of the badass of the group, wearing the backwards baseball cap. She's got the bracelet with
Yeah.
spikes on it, and you just kind of know she's got that rebellious nature. So yeah, fantastic job by Carlos. The other thing, I mentioned it being kind of this environmentally aware story. And that's what's interesting because clearly this entity he dwells beneath is evil and horrific or what have you. But the humans that are working with him, Brian's father specifically, they sort of have a point, of what they're talking about in terms of, well, we have poisoned this planet to some extent.
Yeah.
And you don't want to get preachy, and the book doesn't at all, everybody. It's just a fantastic, fun, kind of rollicking story. But if it does start a conversation at all, I mean, I think that's important, right? I mean, to have those conversations, even in our fiction.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I think one of the things that is great about fiction, especially like speculative fiction, like things like horror, fantasy, science fiction, lumping all those together, but they kind of like let you, I think the reason why they resonate with a lot of people is because they talk about like real world things, but in a way that gives it enough distance that you don't really necessarily get caught up with the like, um, I guess we could say like ideological complications of like discussing the real issues.
Right.
Because, like the real issues in the real world, like everybody has their opinions and we can argue all day about like which opinions are valid and which ones aren't. But like these are like kind of like um opinions that people hold like very deeply and can get really like um heated like when they argue about it, but like when you're talking about it in like a fictional context, you can kind of talk about it in the story and then it kind of takes the edge off it a little bit and maybe makes it to where you can kind of explore some ideas that or find some common ground or whatever it is, but you're finding it and you're talking about it in the context of the story, and then people who really like enjoy the story will be able to kind of relate it back to real life.
Yeah, exactly. You're not pounding them over the head. You're not talking politics. Hey, I'm going to present this story. I'm going to present this idea. And at the end of the day, I mean, the company Triton, they're trying to produce clean energy. I mean, who doesn't
Yeah.
want that, right? I mean, that's a common goal that we should all be striving for. But again, it is kind of ends in a satisfying way, but certainly leaves it open for more and hints at
Yeah.
what's to come. So hopefully at some
Yeah.
point we'll get the next chapter or so.
Yeah, well, I mean, Aftershock as a company is kind of going through some problems right now, and I, yeah, all that's basically on hold until they kind of figure it out. But the that ending was put in there with like the intention of like getting back to it and like doing more at a certain point. I think I even asked like, do you guys want me to take this out? Because, if you're not going to want to do a volume two, it's like, it's kind of redundant. They're like, no, 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 leave it in. So that kind of made me think that like they were definitely up for future arcs as well. So, hopefully it works out. It's beyond my control. So
Yeah, yeah.
have to see.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. So, again, everybody, fantastic story. The ocean will take us. The trade is out. You can order it from your retailer. You can go on Amazon, probably have it in stock trades as well. So, anyway, Rich, thanks so much for joining me. Reminder, everybody, Heartpiercer #1 came out this week. I'm sure you can find it at your local comic shop. Let your retailer know you want to get issue 2 coming out second week of June, June 12th. It'll be hitting
Yep.
the shop. So, anything else that you have coming out or that you want to tease, Rich, before we wind it up here?
Yeah, I think next week or the following, I've got the Mechagodzilla 50th anniversary special coming out. That was like a really fun one to write. It's basically taking the character of Mechagodzilla through like the 50 years of his existence as a Godzilla antagonist. So got to write some giant monsters smashing up cities. Totally, it's really fun. Oversized issue. Like I said, I think it's out either next week or the following. I'm not sure, but keep an eye out for that. And yeah, I'll have some other stuff probably getting announced like later in the year. Just nothing I can talk about yet. And if you want to stay current with me, you could go to my website, rduek.com, and sign up for my newsletter, or on social media, I'm at rduek. That's Rdouek. Twitter and Instagram and all over.
Great. So I'll put a link to Rich's website, the Twitter and Instagram in the show notes, everybody, so you can find him if you're having trouble locating him on social media or get to his website easily. I did look it up. Godzilla, Mechagodzilla 50th Anniversary #1, out in shops May 29th. So again, now's the time to let your retailer know you like it. And I don't know if this is a hot take or not, because I'm not the hugest Godzilla fan, but I feel like Mechagodzilla is cooler than Godzilla. Mechagodzilla is just better in my mind. I don't know.
Arguably, yeah. I mean, he's definitely like got a. I thought it was like the coolest thing when like like I remember as a kid, like watching Godzilla movies and stuff, and just being like, oh shit, it's a robot Godzilla. Like,
Yeah, with
yeah,
the red eyes and the lasers that fired out of it.
yep,
Yeah, that's just cooler than God. I mean, nothing against Godzilla, but
no, yeah,
Godzilla
but
turned up to 11. It's like right in your wheelhouse.
yeah.
Well, everybody, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Rich. Keep up the good work, man. Love what you're doing. So don't
Thank
forget,
you.
everybody, check out Heartpiercer, Drive Like Hell. Trade comes out December. You can get Oceans Will Take Us trade paperback now. So don't forget to check out the show notes. Follow Rich on social media so you know what he's up to. And that's going to do it for this episode. We appreciate the support as always, and we will talk to you next time.